I felt betrayed when my fiancée pawned the engagement ring that I had made with my own hands to pay for a fun trip with her friends. In the end, I canceled the wedding and just left. My name is Mason. I am 32 years old, and for almost 2 years I was engaged to Lauren, who is now 29. We have been together for 5 years, and until recently, I was sure that we had truly strong relationships. Now, I am not sure about that at all, and I feel like I am slowly losing my mind. A little context about me. By profession, I am a mechanical engineer, but my true passion is woodworking. It started as a hobby in my youth, but over the years, it turned into a way to escape from daily routine. I like creating things with my own hands, furniture, carvings, and even jewelry. There is a certain special satisfaction in taking raw materials and turning them into something beautiful and functional. When it came time to propose to Lauren, I firmly knew that I did not want to just go to a store and buy a ready-made ring. That seemed too impersonal. I wanted something meaningful, something that would represent us. Therefore, I decided to make the jewelry myself. Weeks were spent on designing it. It was a simple rose gold band with a sapphire in the center. Lauren loves unique and delicate jewelry, so I decided this would be perfect for her. Just the materials cost me $2,600, but honestly, the time and effort I put in meant much more than the final price tag. When I proposed, Lauren was over the moon. She cried when she found out I made the ring myself, and she kept repeating how much she liked it. She even showed it off to friends and family, telling everyone how special it was. Since then, we had been preparing for the wedding non-stop. We were choosing everything, from the perfect venue to flowers, invitations, and even the smallest details like table settings. For the last 2 years, she wore the ring every day, until about 3 weeks ago, when I noticed something was wrong. The first time it caught my eye was when we were getting ready for dinner. There was no jewelry on her hand, which was extremely unusual. I didn't say anything then, deciding that she just forgot to put it on, or took it off while cleaning. But I noticed the ring was missing again the next day, and then the day after that. I started paying attention, and it became obvious that she wasn't wearing it anymore. I thought that maybe something had happened to it. Maybe it got damaged or lost, and she was just afraid to admit it to me. One evening, while we were sitting on the couch, I casually asked, "Hey, where's your ring? I haven't seen it on you for a long time." She looked at me, paused for a second, and answered, "Oh, I took it to the jeweler for cleaning." I didn't like that answer. I had made that piece myself. I always cleaned and polished it for her myself when it needed refreshing. She had never mentioned going to workshops before, and honestly, the very thought that she did that without telling me seemed strange. But I didn't want to overthink things or look controlling, so I just nodded and said, "Ah, okay." Still, it wouldn't leave my mind. A few more days passed, but the ring never showed up. I brought it up again, trying to sound relaxed. "So, when is your ring coming back from the jeweler?" She glanced at me and snapped, "It's taking a little longer than planned. They said they're very busy." That answer only made me feel worse. What kind of workshop takes that long just to clean a piece of jewelry? I did it myself, and it took 10 minutes at most. But I didn't push. I told myself I was being paranoid, and that there was a simple explanation for everything. Maybe she wanted to give me a break from taking care of it, or maybe I was just overreacting. But as time went on, I couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't adding up. Every time I looked at her hand, it was a reminder that something was missing. And it wasn't just about the jewelry anymore, but about that connection that I thought existed between us. I started searching around the house, hoping she had just left it somewhere. I checked her jewelry stand, her nightstand, and even the kitchen, where she sometimes takes rings off while cooking. It was nowhere to be found. I thought about asking her again, but I didn't want to seem obsessed. If something was wrong, she would eventually tell me. At the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. I started doubting everything. Was I blowing things out of proportion, or was something more serious going on? 3 weeks had passed, and I still hadn't seen the ring. Lauren was acting like everything was fine, and there was nothing strange about this situation. But I couldn't ignore the bad feeling. That ring wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a symbol of everything I believed in about our relationship. And now it was gone, and I didn't know what to think. A few days later, during dinner, Lauren casually said, "Oh, by the way, I'm going away for the weekend with Kelly and Jenny. Just a little girls' trip." She said it so lightly, as if there was nothing special about it, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I froze for a moment, trying to process what I had heard. A trip? When did this idea come up? I asked, trying to keep my voice as neutral as possible. Lauren shrugged and answered, "We're all so tired of the stress and thought, why not take a couple of days off? Nothing crazy, just a getaway to a cottage in the countryside." Here's an important detail. Lauren and I had been saving money like crazy. Between planning the wedding, trying to buy a more reliable car, and a few unexpected expenses that came up earlier this year, we were saving on just about everything. No vacations, no unnecessary purchases. We even skipped our usual date nights. We both agreed on this a few months ago, so I was confused to hear about a trip coming out of nowhere. I tried not to look too worried. "How long have you been planning this?" "Not long," she answered, waving her hand. "Kelly suggested it, and Jenny agreed. They really want me to go. We're all on edge, and it's just a weekend. I think it'll be fun." I didn't like any of this. "How much will it cost?" Lauren shrugged again. "Not much. We're splitting the cost of the cottage, and it's only a couple of days. It won't hurt our budget." Her answers were vague, and that only made my anxiety worse. "Where are you getting the money for this? We've been saving for months, and agreed to put everything we can into the wedding and the car." I tried to speak calmly, but I couldn't hide my concern. She quickly snapped, "Don't worry about it. I've been putting a little aside here and there." And then she looked back down at her phone. That answer didn't make sense. Lauren had never mentioned saving up for anything like this before. We openly discussed our finances, and I couldn't remember a single time in recent months when she talked about having extra money for a trip. But I didn't insist. Maybe she really had been saving, and I just hadn't noticed. I dropped the conversation, although something about it still bothered me. The next evening, I came home from work and found Lauren in the bedroom packing. Seeing her fold clothes and carefully packed toiletries made me realize this trip was real. It wasn't just an idea anymore. Everything was real, and she was leaving in a day or two. I still didn't want to push too hard and turn it into a fight, but the more I thought about it, the more it hurt. Lauren isn't the type to make such plans spontaneously, and if she had been saving money, why hadn't she mentioned it before? Something was wrong. The next day, I decided to bring it up again. "So, what's the plan for the trip?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Are you splitting all the costs? It sounds like it will add up to a fair amount. Gas, food, rent. Are you sure we can afford this?" Lauren sighed, clearly annoyed by my questions. "I already told you, it's all paid for. Kelly found a great deal, and we're splitting everything equally." "Still," I said carefully, "it's a trip. It's not just about the cottage, right? Are you sure this is the right time for something like this?" She rolled her eyes and threw her phone onto the couch. "Mason, I have everything under control. Why are you acting like this is a worldwide problem? It's just a weekend. I need this." Her defensive attitude only made me more anxious. "I'm just trying to understand, that's all," I said. "We've been so tight on money, and all of this seems too sudden. Where did the money come from?" Her face changed for a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to notice. She seemed like she didn't know what to say. That hesitation made my stomach clench. "Lauren," I said carefully, "what's going on?" She shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. "I told you," she answered after a moment. "I've taken care of everything. You have nothing to worry about." "That's not an answer," I said more firmly. "We've been budgeting every penny for months, and now you suddenly come up with money out of nowhere for entertainment. I'm not trying to start a fight, but I need to know. Where did the money come from?" She looked angry, as if I were interrogating her for no reason. "Fine," she burst out, throwing her hands up. "If you absolutely have to know, I pawned the ring. That's where the money came from." I just stared at her, trying to process what I had heard. "What? You pawned your engagement ring?" I asked, my voice quieter. "Why?" "Because I needed money," she answered, as if that were the most obvious solution in the world. "It's not gone forever. I'll get it back after the trip." I couldn't believe my ears. My chest tightened as her words sank in. Each one hurt more than the last. She pawned the ring I had made for her, a piece of my soul into which I had put so many hours of work, just to go on some stupid trip. Did it mean so little to her? Did I mean so little to her? "Lauren, that ring wasn't just a piece of jewelry. I made it for you myself. I spent weeks working on it because I wanted it to have meaning, and you just took it to a pawn shop without even telling me," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "It's my ring," she declared. I didn't think I needed your permission to do something with my own property. Besides, I didn't sell it. It's temporary. This isn't about permission, I answered, trying to stay calm. It's about you making a serious decision that affects both of us without even consulting me. That ring was supposed to symbolize our relationship, and you got rid of it as if it were nothing. I didn't get rid of it, she yelled. I'm getting it back. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? Her tone, her gestures, everything about her reaction made me feel like I was going crazy. She seemed not to understand, or not to want to understand, what that ring meant to me. To her, it was just a means to an end. Lauren, I finally said, trying to speak as calmly as possible. I don't think this is the time for trips. We were supposed to be saving, and pawning the ring for this is just wrong. I can't cancel everything, she snapped, crossing her arms. I already promised Kelly and Jenny I would go. We have everything planned, and I need this break. At that moment, I saw no point in continuing the conversation. I could have stopped her. I could have made sure she didn't leave. Why bother trying at all if she didn't see any problem with it from the start? The next morning, without a shadow of doubt, she packed her bags and walked out the door, as if it were the most ordinary day. We'll talk when I get back, she tossed over her shoulder. I stood and watched her go, fully understanding that any conversation we had after this would change nothing. One thing I knew for sure, things would never be the same. When she left, I just sat there trying to process what had happened. She had flat out said she pawned the engagement ring, the one I had spent so much time and effort finding and buying materials for, as if it were some cheap trinket. And then she calmly left with her friends. She didn't ask, didn't warn me, just presented me with a fait accompli at the last moment. At first, I tried to let it go, telling myself not to torment myself while she was gone. But the longer I sat in the silence, the heavier my heart became. It was no longer just about the ring or the trip itself. What hurt me was the way she had handled everything. My opinion didn't matter. I was just supposed to accept it. The secrecy, the dismissive tone, her whole behavior, it all felt fundamentally wrong. The next hour, I spent mindlessly scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself, but my thoughts kept going back to her trip. Lauren is not usually impulsive, and she's not the type to jump into adventures without thinking everything through. This didn't make sense, especially given how tight finances had been lately. I decided to figure things out on my own. If she wasn't going to tell me the truth, I had to find it out myself. I started with her friends, Kelly and Jenny. I'll be honest, I was never a fan of theirs. They're the type of people who live for drama and stupid decisions. As far as I know, neither of them would agree to a quiet weekend in the country. In their world, a vacation means noisy clubs, bad decisions, and a rough morning. The idea of a peaceful getaway in a cabin seemed highly suspicious to me. Something clearly didn't add up. I went to Kelly's social media profile. Of course, the latest post was a photo of a luxurious cottage among the trees, with a caption about the start of a girl's weekend. The house looked too expensive for people on a tight budget. Then I noticed another detail in the description. Thanks to my man for helping organize this trip. You're the best. That was strange. Lauren hadn't mentioned that Kelly's boyfriend was sponsoring part of the trip. On the contrary, she claimed they were splitting all expenses equally. I wondered, did Lauren pawn the ring just to keep up with Kelly and Jenny? The more I thought about it, the more logical it seemed. Lauren had always been close to Kelly, and honestly, admired her carefree lifestyle. I wouldn't be surprised if she felt the need to match that lifestyle, even at the cost of absurd decisions. Now her attempts to avoid answering my questions looked even more suspicious. I continued looking through Kelly's page, but there wasn't much information. A couple of standard photos with friends and some packing pictures. Then I checked Jenny's account. She's usually more low-key online, but her latest story caught my attention. It was a short video of her and Kelly clinking glasses in front of a fully stocked bar. This finally confirmed my fears. Lauren had described this as a relaxing getaway, but everything I saw pointed to something else. A knot formed in my stomach. Why couldn't she just tell me the truth? I leaned back in my chair, trying to make sense of it all. Maybe I was overcomplicating things. Maybe Kelly and Jenny just like to exaggerate. But the nagging feeling of unease wouldn't go away. That's when I noticed Lauren's laptop on the kitchen table. She must have forgotten it in her rush. I stood there looking at it for about a minute, fighting with myself. On one hand, looking through it would be an invasion of her privacy. But on the other hand, she was already hiding important things from me. She had pawned the ring that meant so much to me, and she was ignoring my feelings. I decided I had the right to know the truth. I turned on the device and opened her messages. The group chat opened immediately, and as I read, I felt worse and worse. This was not a quiet weekend. They were planning bar crawls, meeting men, and parties with alcohol to see what comes of it. One message from Kelly literally burned itself into my memory. "Leave the ring at home. No one needs to know you're engaged this weekend." My hands gripped the edge of the table in anger and disbelief. I kept scrolling, and every new message hurt even more. Jenny added, "Yes, this is your chance to let loose before the wedding. Don't let him hold you back." Lauren's reply, a laughing emoji, and the phrase, "Of course, I could definitely use a little freedom." Freedom. That word hit me like a truck. Freedom from what? From me? From the life we were building together? I kept looking for some justification for her words, but it only got worse. Jenny joked that they could pretend to be single all weekend, and no one would ever know. And Lauren didn't make a single attempt to stop it. She just laughed, as if it were a harmless joke. I couldn't believe she was that stupid to trust friends like that, or listen to them. It seemed she was sure that no matter what she did, I would still be there and fix everything. The ground crumbled beneath my feet. It was no longer about money or the ring. It was about trust. And the chat clearly showed that Lauren was ready to throw that trust in the trash. I sat in front of the screen for what felt like an eternity. Part of me wanted to close the laptop and pretend nothing had happened, but common sense told me I couldn't ignore this. I had to act. At first, I wanted to call her, but what would I say? "Hey Lauren, I read your chat and now I know you've been lying to me." No, that kind of conversation isn't done over the phone, only in person. Still, I couldn't pretend everything was fine while she was out there lying to me and making a mockery of our relationship. At that moment, I realized I was not willing to continue a relationship with someone who could lie to my face and make such decisions behind my back. If she is capable of this now, before marriage, what will she do later when life gets harder? Everything I knew about Lauren and our connection was slipping through my fingers. What she did was not a small mistake. It was something huge. Call it whatever you want, but I did not see a future with someone who so easily shows such disrespect toward me and our union. This wasn't about insecurity or overreacting. It was about honesty and the kind of partnership I need in my life. Clearly, it wasn't possible with her. I did the first thing that came to mind. I opened my laptop and started gathering data about the wedding we had been planning. Venues, catering, flowers, all the booked services. At first, I acted impulsively, almost recklessly. But looking at the confirmation emails, I knew exactly what I had to do. I started calling everyone and canceling the orders. The hardest part was the venue. We had searched for months, and losing the deposit was very painful. But when I told the coordinator that the wedding was canceled, I felt a strange relief, as if I had finally regained control over my life. After that, I canceled the catering and the florists, spending hours undoing months of planning. It was exhausting, but I could not marry someone who did not respect me. Simply canceling the wedding didn't seem like enough. Lauren was still on that trip, continuing to lie and act like a single woman. I couldn't let her get away with it, knowing that other people were involved in the lie. I kept thinking about the chat messages. Kelly and Jenny boasted that no one would find out anything, planning to pretend to be single. They thought they were so clever and had fooled everyone, but they were wrong. Judging by Lauren's behavior, Kelly and Jenny's boyfriends didn't even suspect anything. This no longer involved only me. Those guys deserved to know the truth about the women they were involved with. I wasn't about to sit back and let them turn this deception into a joke. They needed to be exposed. I took my phone and started searching. It didn't take me long to find Mark, Kelly's boyfriend, on Instagram. He was tagged in several of her photos, and his profile was public. "Hey Mark," I wrote. "I know this sounds strange, but I'm Lauren's fiancée. I just found a conversation between her, Kelly, and Jenny about their trip. I think you should know what's going on there." I attached screenshots of the chat, especially the parts where Kelly suggested leaving the ring behind and pretending to be single. After double-checking everything, I hit send. I did the same for Jake, Jenny's boyfriend. He was harder to find, but after scrolling through her profile, I found him tagged in one photo. I sent him a similar message with the same evidence. Then a wave of anxiety hit me. What if they didn't believe me? What if this only made things worse? But then the replies started coming. Mark was the first to answer. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" He wrote that Kelly had promised him a quiet cabin getaway and hadn't mentioned anything about bars or single-style behavior. Jake's reaction was predictable. He thanked me for opening his eyes. Jenny had tried to present everything as a normal, quiet weekend with friends, and he had no idea about the catch. Both guys were understandably upset. We exchanged messages for a long time while I explained the details of what I had found. Mark was especially angry. He admitted he had had a strange feeling about this trip from the moment she mentioned it. He said he should have trusted his gut. Over the next few hours, I started hearing news about the consequences. Mark wrote to me again, saying that chaos had broken out. He confronted Kelly, but she tried to brush it off as if nothing serious had happened. When he didn't accept her excuses, she claimed that the idea to leave the rings at home had been Lauren's. For me, that was the final straw. That same night, I packed my things and moved out. Jake didn't take long either. He sent a message that Jenny was trying to twist the whole story, calling it just a joke, but he wasn't buying it. He went to her parents' house to sort things out, since she refused to give him clear answers. According to what they told me, the situation turned into a total nightmare. Kelly and Jenny turned on each other, trying to shift the blame, and Lauren didn't escape responsibility either. It turned out that Kelly told Mark that Lauren had dragged them into this mess to make herself look better. By the time our conversation ended, I felt a strange whirlwind of emotions. It was satisfying to know I wasn't alone in this, that other people were just as shocked as I was. But it was unbearable to see the damage this trip had caused, not only to me, but also to Mark and Jake. After that, I decided to just let it go and focus on myself. I had done everything I could, and I saw no point in dwelling on what had happened. All day I tried to clear my mind, cleaning, walking Max, and avoiding anything that might remind me of Lauren. The house still felt strange, too quiet and empty, but I told myself this was for the best. I couldn't control her actions, but it was within my power to decide how to move forward. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. A message came in from Lauren. She was asking what was going on and why I had messaged Mark. I stared at the screen for a while, feeling everything inside me clench before putting the phone aside. I wasn't going to let her drag me back into her problems. I thought about how to answer, realizing I didn't want to get into a texting argument. In the end, I wrote that we needed to talk in person, and I demanded she come home for a serious face-to-face conversation. The reply came immediately. She claimed she couldn't just leave, since the trip had been planned for weeks, and she said she didn't understand why I was behaving this way. I didn't get into a long debate. I simply repeated my demand that she come back for a proper conversation, adding that, otherwise, she shouldn't expect to find me at home when she returned. She didn't reply again. I understood that whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same. She came back late the next day. At first, I didn't even hear the door open, but her voice cut through the silence. Lauren asked sharply and accusingly if I was serious, as if I were the one who had made a mistake. I turned around and saw her in the doorway. She stood there with her arms crossed, looking both angry and shocked. Staying calm, I said I was glad she was back. The last thing I wanted was for this to turn into a shouting match. She exploded, saying that Kelly and Jenny were furious, that Mark and Jake were blowing up their phones, and now they were blaming her for everything. She demanded an explanation for my actions. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms, and said it was time for honesty. Since she had promised to talk when she returned, well, here we were. She scoffed, throwing her bag on the floor, accusing me of meddling in other people's relationships and only making things worse. I asked if she wanted to discuss who had actually made the situation worse. I emphasized that this wasn't about her friends, it was about our relationship. She sighed loudly, as if she were the one having to endure an unbearable headache, and allowed me to speak. I looked at her, defensive, combative, and completely unaware of my feelings. At that moment, everything I had been holding inside finally came out. I said firmly that I no longer recognized her. She had lied, kept secrets, and made decisions that affected both of us without thinking about the consequences. And when I tried to talk about it, she made me out to be the guilty one. She narrowed her eyes and called my words ridiculous, claiming she had never lied. I asked sarcastically whether it wasn't a lie to describe the trip as a quiet getaway with friends and to hide how it was paid for. She hesitated for only a second, and then her pride returned. She said she had told me about the source of the money, and that the trip hadn't been as wild as I was trying to make it seem. In her opinion, there was nothing special about it. I argued that the problem was her unwillingness to be honest with me. I asked if she understood what it felt like to find everything out after the fact, as if I didn't deserve to know the truth. She rolled her eyes, accusing me of being overly dramatic and insisting she had done nothing wrong. I shook my head, realizing she still didn't get it. It wasn't about the trip itself, it was about respect. She had pawned the engagement ring, hid it, and dismissed my feelings. She coldly replied that it was just a ring, and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. Those words hit me harder than I expected. I said quietly that I had made that piece of jewelry for her. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it symbolized our future, and she had treated it as if it meant nothing. She looked at me with an icy expression and a tone that made me doubt whether I had ever known her at all, and said, "If I am so fixated on a piece of gold, then I should rethink my views on marriage." That hurt the most. I took a deep breath and agreed. I said that I really should rethink everything, because our views clearly did not align. She looked confused for a moment and asked what that meant. I answered firmly that it was over between us. I told her I had canceled the wedding, because I was no longer willing to pretend everything was fine when she had shown her true attitude toward our union. Her jaw dropped. She couldn't believe I had canceled the wedding without consulting her. I calmly nodded and gave her words back to her, saying I didn't think I needed permission. Without waiting for the argument to continue, I turned around and walked away, leaving her to face the consequences. The next few days felt unreal. Lauren moved out, took her things, and disappeared to an unknown location. I didn't bother finding out where she went. I no longer wanted to chase after her. At first it felt strange, but the house felt easier to breathe in. After a month, I started to feel normal again. However, last week I received a short message from Lauren suggesting we talk. I looked at it for a long time, thinking about whether to reply. But I realized I didn't owe her anything. Whatever she wanted to say, it wouldn't change the past or my decision to move on. I left the message unanswered, and frankly, good riddance. Now, about the ring. At first I just wanted to forget about it, but the thought of Lauren pawning it so easily wouldn't leave my mind. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the desire to get back something I had made with my own hands, but I decided to find it. I didn't know which pawn shop she had gone to, and I didn't want to ask her. Instead, I started retracing her possible path. Lauren always chose convenience, so I made a list of shops near her usual routes to work or the store. I visited them one by one, asking about a rose gold ring with a sapphire. In most places, they couldn't help me. Finally, at one shop, the clerk asked if there was an engraving inside with a date or initials. My heart skipped a beat. I had personally engraved our anniversary date there. When he pulled out the ring, I felt as if I had regained a piece of my stolen dignity. But I couldn't keep it because of the painful memories. In the end, I sold it. It was both sad and liberating at the same time. The money I received, I put into a personal project I had dreamed of for years, but had never dared to start. That became a symbol of finding myself again. When Lauren found out about it, she called me in a rage, claiming I had no right to sell her ring. I answered that since she had pawned it without telling me, my decision was none of her concern. She tried to justify herself by saying she had planned to get it back after the trip, and she called me too sensitive. I didn't argue. Recovering and selling the ring helped me finally move on. Now I keep moving forward. Work is getting better. My true friends are by my side. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm on the right path. The life I want has finally become tangible. If you are going through something similar, my advice: trust your gut. If you feel something is wrong, don't ignore it. Don't stay where you aren't valued just because of the time you have invested. You deserve respect and to come first, not to be a backup plan. I am moving forward, step by step, and I feel like I am doing everything right.